Today is February the 3rd, 2018, and we are going to continue what we've been studying. It's basically Millerite history. And Millerite history is the story of the parable of the 10 virgins, right? And we base it on the story of Psalms 23. The Psalms 23 is our basic line right here. This is the entire Psalms 23. The Song of David is actually a prophecy of the life of Jesus. That's the life of Jesus right there. We put that on a line, right? And we also see that this is the story of the Millerite history. The Millerite history. And this represents the experience of the 10 virgins, right? We've been seeing this is the experience of 10 virgins. All right. But we also see that this is a fulfillment of the 7 thunders. Now, 7 thunders is the delineation of events that happen during the first and the second angel's message, right? First, second angel's message, right? The events that happen, delineation of prophecies. So which prophecies were delineated here, right? The first one is 1260, right? Just a review. 1260 is the delineation of prophecy of the rise and the fall of who? Papacy, right? Papacy rose and papacy fell. Okay, that's 1260. What about 1290? Is the rise and fall of which power? 1290. The rise and fall of who? France, the two-horned beast. Because France gave its power to the papacy. And the papacy then have its power for 1260 years. And then France eventually fell. Okay? All right. What about 2520? This is the story of the indignation. This is how long the king will have indignation unto God's people, right? This is the first indignation. We see that in Daniel 11, verse 36, right? Daniel 11, verse 36. So we have 1, 2, 3. The fourth prophecy is in Revelation 9. 391 years and 15 days is the prediction that the Ottoman Empire will fall. Okay, what about this 1335? That's Daniel 12. 1335, blessed are those who wait and come to the 1335. What do? They blessed or they wait, because what happens? Their disappointment comes at April 19, 1844, and then they have to tarry, right? Blessed are those who wait. Right? So 1335, right? The people who are disappointed and they have to wait, they have to tarry. Okay? All right. 1335. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then what about the 2300? Mornings and evenings. Where do you find that? Daniel 8, verse 14, right? 2300 days. And the sanctuary shall be cleansed, right? Okay. And what about this one? This is the end of indignation. Daniel 8, verse 19. This is the end of indignation. This is the indignation. How long shall the abomination of desolation tread underfoot the host and the host and the what? And the sanctuary. The host is trodden for how many years? 1260, 2520 here. Right? And then, right? Until when is the sanctuary trodden? Until October 22, 1844. Because now they understand the sanctuary doctrine. Right? And it's open up to them that Christ is entering into the most holy place. So you get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 time prophecies. And Ellen White said that midway between the first time that they thought Jesus was going to come, they were disappointed right here. right? Midway between here and then when they thought Jesus was going to come again, right here. Midway between here and here is midnight. That's midnight. So this is midway. This is midnight. All right? This is midway. This is midnight. Okay? And that's the 5th day of the 4th month. Right? We did this last week. We see that the end of the 70 weeks is the stoning of Stephen. That's in Daniel 9 verse, I think 24 and 25, right? 24. The end of the 70 weeks, Stephen was stoned. This is the 1 week, right? Because this is the beginning of the 69 weeks when Jesus was anointed, right? And what happened in the midst of the week? He was broken, right? He was crucified. This is the midst of the week, right? The midst of the week, is it also midway? Yeah. Right? It lines up. The midst of the week is also lines up with midway, right? Right. So all these prophecies are all connected. If we put it line upon line, we will see the connections, right? 70 weeks, 2,300 days, 1335, 1260, 1290, 7 times, right? All of these are all connected, okay? Now we see that William Miller was giving the first angel's message here. And then it was eventually empowered by Josiah Litch, right? And then Samuel Snow took the message. And he basically gave the understanding, well, obviously through the Holy Spirit, gave the understanding for the third angel's message, all right? That he says, you know what? Jesus is going to come. The bridegroom is going to come. The bridegroom cometh on October 22, 1844. Who was the one that preached it? Samuel Snow, right? Samuel Snow preached it, okay? All right. Now, we are going to study about the third angel's message. And how was it that our pioneers understood that it was to be given on October 22, 1844, right? The bridegroom cometh. Behold, the bridegroom cometh, go ye out and meet him. How was it that they understood eventually that it was on October 22, 1844? It was in the fall of 1844. Who of our pioneers, okay? Who were these 4 pioneers? Was the first one to make a suggestion that, you know what? Jesus is going to come in the fall. Who was the first one? Before, they had no idea. They just say, well, you know, Jesus is going to come in 1843. But now they're going to be coming a little bit more specific. They say, you know what? It's going to be in the fall. Who was the first pioneer that said, you know, Jesus is going to come in the fall? Hmm? You know, that's a, you know, I gave you 4 choices, you know, but actually it's William Miller. All right? It's actually William Miller. All right, let me, hold on, I got to get my notes here. All right, let me get my notes. Sorry about that. Continue again. All right, it was actually William Miller. All right? So we're going to put that upon a line. Now we're going to study the third angel's message as it's been given in the context of, behold, the bridegroom cometh. Go ye out and meet him. Right? Because that's the third angel's message. He wrote it and it was published on May 17, 1843. Right? It was in 1843. It's still in 1843, remember? Okay. He initially used this chart, right? This is the 1843 chart. And on it, it says what? This is the end of the prophecy. 1843, 1843. That the 2520 is going to end at 1843. The 2300, 1843. The, right here, 1798 plus 45 years, 1843. The 1335, 1843, right? There's, right? 1843. He says Jesus is going to come in 1843, all right? When he first realized, that, you know what? Go and study again. There has something to do with the autumn. Jesus is going to come in the autumn. All right. He wrote in the Signs of the Times to Brother Himes. Who's Brother Himes? Joshua Himes. Joshua Himes is the editor of Himes Signs of the Times. So if you see HST, it's Joshua V. Himes. Himes Signs of the Times. Right? It was published in 1843. My health is on the gain, as my folks would say. He was basically sick. He had all kinds of boils on him. Right? And all these people were like Job's friends, just, kind of taunting him, kind of thing like that. Oh, boy. But you know what? I have been studying about these periods. There's going to be a termination of these periods. 2300, 2520, 1840, 1335, right? All these time prophecies have to terminate. I hope he is right about the termination of periods. I want to see Brother Bliss. This is Sylvester Bliss. They're talking about the terminations of the periods, right? All those time prophecies going to have to end. I will tell you why. If you will examine, you will find all the ceremonies of the typical law. What's the ceremonies of the typical law? The feasts, right? The Jewish feasts that was observed in the first month or vernal equinox. So he's talking about the vernal equinox. So it all happens in the spring. There's going to be feasts, Jewish feasts, that happen in the spring. Had their fulfillment in Christ's first advent and sufferings. So the feasts that happened in the spring were fulfilled when Jesus came the first time on earth. Right? But all the feasts and ceremonies in the 7th month or autumn equinox can only have their fulfillment at his second advent. All right, so he divided the feast like this. The spring feast was fulfilled at the time when Jesus first came. Right? And the autumn feasts will be fulfilled when he's going to come the second time, before he comes the second time. All right. I think we better go over the feast. You want to go? We should go over the feast, right? Which feast are we talking about? Okay. All right. Let's go over the feast. This is the Hebrew calendar, right? This is the Hebrew calendar of 31 AD. How do you get this calendar? Easy. Just Google it, right? You just Google it. There's the calendar right there. This is the calendar in 31 AD, the Jewish calendar, right? Nisan, Iyar, Sivan, Tammuz, Menahem Av, Elul, Tishri. This is the 7th month. There's 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, but we don't put it there because there's no feast over there. So he says there's the spring feasts right here, and there's the autumn feast right here. Okay? Right. This is the spring feasts. All right. Tell me, what are the spring feasts? Who wants to? Anybody wants to tell me give me an example of one of the spring feasts? Easy. Which one? Passover. Okay, start with Passover. Passover is what day of what month? 14th day of the first month. All right? And on 31 AD, the 14th day of the first month fell on a Friday. It has to fall on a Friday. Why? Because Jesus was the Passover lamb, right? So that prophecy was fulfilled, right? Jesus was the Passover lamb. Right? He was slain so that his blood can be put on the doorposts, right? 14th day of the first month. Okay. And then he rested. And that's that on the 15th day. And what spring festival is this one? From the 15th to the 21st. Feast of what? Unleavened bread. Because Jesus is the unleavened bread also, right? Right. Jesus is the unleavened bread. Okay. All right. And in the Feast of the Unleavened Bread, there's another There's one part of it. It's called the waving of the sheaf. My question is, when is the waving of the sheaf that was fulfilled by Jesus, and how was it fulfilled? How was the waving of the wave sheaf fulfilled by Jesus when he was on earth, between the 15th to the 21st? How was he fulfilling the waving of the wave sheaf? Yeah? And he went to heaven, and he was, what happened to him when he went to heaven? And he was presented to the Father, right? Right? When did he go to heaven? Between the time that he met Mary and then? Well, it's got to be before he met with the disciples in the upper room, right? Yeah, because he went, on what day was that? On the 16th, right? So he was presented as a wave sheaf on the 16th, right? So, but what does Leviticus say? And the waving of the wave sheaf, does it happen on the 16th day of the first month? No, it can't happen on the 16th day of the first month. It happens on the morrow after the Sabbath. It has to happen on the morrow, the day after Sabbath, during the Feast of Unleavened Bread. So it happened on this year that the 16th is on a Sunday, right? And Jesus was presented as the wave sheaf. Okay, what about other years? Could the 14th day of the first month happen on another day other than Friday? Yeah, of course, it can, right? Okay, right? So this is Passover, this is Feast of Unleavened Bread, this is the morrow after the Sabbath. This is the what? Sheaf. Wave sheaf, right? What's this? What feast is this? It's the feast of, it's called the Feast of Weeks. They actually have, like, this is the Feast of Weeks, right? The Feast of Weeks. How many weeks? 7 weeks, right? Seven weeks. It's the morrow after the Sabbath, the 7th Sabbath, right? So you count 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The morrow after the 7th Sabbath is the 50th day. And that's the Pentecost. 50 is Pentecost, right? The Pentecost. Yeah, it is also in certain what it's also Jubilee also, right? Yeah. But it's the Pentecost, right? Okay. All right. Okay, the Pentecost. So these were fulfilled during the time of when Jesus came the first time around. Okay. What about down here? What about these feasts down here? All right, I gave you a clue. What's the first day of the 7th month? What feast is this? The first day of the 7th month. Blowing of trumpets. Blowing of trumpets. All right? There you go. Put the blowing of trumpets. What's the 10th day of the 7th month? That's easy. What's the 10th day of the 7th month? Yeah, what is that? The Day of Atonement. Day of Atonement. And Jesus, when the high priest has to go into the most holy place, right? And has to sprinkle the blood on the ark. Okay? All right, that's the... What about these days, from the 15th to the 22nd? What feast is this? Feast of Tabernacles. What does the Feast of Tabernacle mean? What were they commemorating? Living in tents, right? They were living in tents where? In the wilderness. And they have to build booths made of palm branches, right? So this is the festival of booths, also the festival of All right, Feast of Tabernacle. All right, okay. So I got it here. Passover, first day of the 14th day of the first month. 15th to 21st is the Feast of Unleavened Bread, but also the wave sheaf is the morrow after the Sabbath. All right? Pentecost, Feast of Weeks, blowing of trumpets, Day of Atonement, and then Feast of Tabernacles. All right. So William Miller is saying what? These things happen at the time when Jesus first came. Okay, my question here. Here's my question. These have to be fulfilled before he comes the second time. All right? Okay. So the 10th day of the 7th month. Now this is Adventism. All right? We believe that the 10th day of the 7th month was fulfilled when? The Day of Atonement was fulfilled antitypically. When? No, yeah, Archie just said it. When was the day, when did Jesus actually enter into the most holy place and cleanse the tabernacle? October 22, 1844, right? Right. Okay, my question is, all right, anybody can answer this. When was the blowing of trumpets then? When was the blowing of trumpets? So blowing of the trumpets is the first day of the 7th month. When is the blowing of trumpets? Okay, anybody have an idea? When was the blowing of trumpets?
In the time, you mean?
Yeah, when is, when is, so this is October 22, 1844, is fulfilled here. What about the blowing of trumpets?
September.
July.
I said September.
Yeah, it's a little bit more complicated than that. It's a little bit more complicated than that. What about the blowing of the 7 trumpets? When was the blowing of the 7 trumpets? All the way from the time of... no, the blowing of the 7 trumpets, right? From the time of the Romans, the 7 trumpets, right? The first 4 trumpets, right? The 5th and the 6th. What about the 6th trumpet? When did the second woe end? August 11, 1840, right? This is the blowing of the trumpet, the second woe, the 6th trumpet blow, right? When did the 7th trumpet blow? When did the 7th trumpet start blowing? That's in Revelation 11. What day? When Jesus entered into the most holy place. From the 7th trumpet started blowing here. This is the blowing of the trumpets, right? Right? Right. Because the 6th trumpet, right? The 7 trumpets. The second woe, the first woe, there's all blowing of trumpets. All the trumpets, yeah. All the trumpets.
Isn't it more appropriate to say the second woe since
it's actually, yeah.
7-1, so
yeah.
That falls around.
Now, the other thing is that right there, Archie brought up a good point. What happens when the trumpet is blown on Yom Kippur? That's the Jubilee. It only happens on the Jubilee. After 50 years, on the 50th year. The blowing of the trumpets happens on the 10th day of the 7th month. Right? That happens on the Jubilee. Right. Okay. So there's a blowing of trumpet. Because we know there's a blowing of the trumpet because on October 22, 1844, the 7th trumpet started blowing. Okay, my question is, what about the Feast of Tabernacles? All right. Anybody want to figure, if this is supposed to happen before Jesus comes, when are we supposed to be living in booths made of palm trees? Spiritually. When are we supposed to be living in booths made of palm trees? Before Jesus comes. Typifying our wandering in the desert. Huh? when are we supposed to be living in booths made of palm trees, wandering in the desert before Jesus comes?
Before Jesus comes?
Yeah, before Jesus comes. When? Where?
Before Jesus comes. Oh, where?
Yeah, what kind of... Yeah,
You have to get out.
right. Yeah, we got to be wandering in the wilderness. Right. And we're going to have to be running into the mountains, right? Okay.
That's after the Day of Atonement?
Yeah, because this is October 22, 1844.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, you see all that? So William Miller says, these things happen before Jesus comes, the second time. These things happen when he came first. All right? You see all that? Okay. All right, we'll continue. Okay, how did he write this? He wrote it in Joshua Himes. All right? He wrote it in Joshua Himes. Oh, sorry, here you go. The Signs of the Times, the Expositor of Prophecy. Right? He was published on May 17, 1843. Right? Now, there's multiple points that he made, right? About 11 points. The first point that he made was that, the ark that Noah built, on what month did it rest on the mount, which is Mount Ararat? What month do you think that the ark rested? It actually, he proves it that it's the 7th month. It's on the 7th month, right? And he makes all these points that all these things happen on the 7th month. The atonement was made on the 10th day of the 7th month. And it's the certain typical of the atonement Christ is now making for us. Christ is making an atonement. He's making an atonement on the 7th month. When the high priest came out of the Holy of Holies after making the atonement, he blessed the people. So will our great high priest. This was on the 7th month, on the 10th day. He's making a point for the 7th month. It was in harvest time. The Feast of Harvest was kept in the 7th month. Right? That's the Feast of Tabernacles. It's also a Feast of Harvest. From the 10th day to the 17th. Oh, wait a minute. That's from the 10th to the 17th. That's not the Feast of Harvest. That's not the Feast of Tabernacles, sorry.
No.
And the end of the world is compared to the harvest. So it's the end of the world is harvest, and it's in the 7th month. Also the Feast of Tabernacles, in the great day of the feast in the last day. So in the last great day, Jesus' voice will call forth the righteous dead. So he's making a point. You know what? Jesus is going to come in the 7th month, right? He was our first pioneer that started making this idea that Jesus was going to come in the 7th month. And he continues, Will you, Joshua Himes and Brother Sylvester Bliss, examine and tell me what you think of my scribble on this point? So we call this William Miller's scribble, right? My scribbling. I'm just making some ideas. Do you believe in this? What do you think about this? If this should be true, we shall not see his glorious appearing until after the autumn. So it's got to be in the autumn. Now he wrote it in May. He wrote it on May 3rd. He's going to say, well, you know what? It's going to be in the autumn of 1843. It's got to be in the autumn, right? A few months more of trial and calumny, and then all will be over. Right? So it's going to be, right? Remember, this is still in 1843. Okay, right? Yeah. But the thing about it is he was still using the equinox. Yeah. Eventually, they started changing from the understanding of the equinox to starting using Jewish calendar. All right? Starting using Jewish calendar. But you know what? William Miller, after he brought this point about that Jesus has got to be coming in the autumn, we have to look at what actually did he change his mind afterwards. Okay, see, William Miller, he wrote after the autumn equinox on May 3rd, and he published it on May 17th. Right? Before that, they were in darkness, They did not know anything about the fact that Jesus was supposed to come, kind of spiritually, to cleanse the sanctuary in the autumn, right? So we equate that to the time of the end, because previously they were in darkness of this, right? So we can put it as a time of the end right here, right? This is the time of the end. William Miller, right? The thing is that he says, you know what? It's going to happen in the fall. But he changed his mind, and he says, you know what? Around just before April 19, 1844, he had to change his mind, because now they were studying the Karaite reckoning and Ezra 7:9. And finally they came to an idea, you know what? Jesus is going to come on April 19. Wait a minute, that's not the fall. He actually said, you know what? Jesus is probably going to come in the fall. But over here, he changed his mind, and he says, well, Jesus is going to come actually in the spring of 1844, based on the Karaite reckoning of the first day of the first month. Right? So he actually changed his mind. And they were disappointed because Jesus didn't come. Obviously, they were wrong, on multiple levels. Right? They were wrong. Okay. So who then carried on? Who then carried on preaching about Jesus coming, giving the third angel's message? William Miller kind of became silent. He did not continue, kind of elaborating on the 7th month, that Jesus is going to come in the 7th month. Who picked this up and started preaching that Jesus is going to come in the 7th month? It's going to be Samuel Snow, right? All right. It's going to be Samuel Snow, right? Okay. Let's see. So how do we know what Samuel Snow was preaching? We just read his letters. He had many letters. He had several letters that he wrote, and we can read those letters. And when we write, we see when those letters were written, and when those letters were published, we can put it on a line. We're going to put Samuel Snow's letters on this line right here. Right? Now we know this is the first disappointment. They thought Jesus was going to come here, and Jesus didn't come. And we know that Samuel Snow, at midnight, he gave the bride, behold, the bridegroom cometh. All right? We know that Samuel Snow eventually went to Exeter camp meeting, and he gave the message twice here, and that's the midnight cry. And eventually, they had a great disappointment. But Hiram Edson saw in the field that Jesus actually went into the most holy place. Right? Okay. So we're going to put Samuel Snow's letters onto this line and see what we can learn from it. Why are we studying all this? Why do we need to study all this? Is this just an exercise in, an increase of knowledge, so that we know more than other people?
Is this going to be our line too?
Yeah. Yeah, this is just a mental exercise, just so that, we just know more about Millerite history. No, it's actually not. We're gonna see. There's gonna be predictions given before midnight, right? There's gonna be predictions given before. We saw. If this is our line, there's gonna be predictions given before here. There's gonna be predictions given before midnight. There's gonna be predictions given before Sunday law, right? Okay. And with all this, we're gonna suddenly see. There's another line that opens up, another waymark that's opened up. It's sunset. So we're going to study, based on studying this, we're going to be able to put sunset on the timeline, right? And predictions that's being made, all right? Okay. Okay, we'll do the first, we'll do, okay. Let's do Samuel Snow, right? So Samuel Snow, he actually wrote several letters, right? He wrote several letters that was published. First in 1842, he wrote a letter about Hosea and Habakkuk 2. And it was also published in 1842, right? But these letters were not really talking about the 7th month. Not talking about Jesus coming back in the 7th month. Right? His first letter that he started was on April 3, 1844, talking about Jesus' second coming was going to happen in the fall. Right? So he continued what William Miller had been preaching. Yeah. William Miller wrote in a scribble, you know what? Jesus is going to come in the fall based on the fall feasts. Right? So Samuel Snow is the one that took up that torch, so to speak. Right? He went and took up that. Right? This is what he said. It appears then that the decree, right? Which decree? From which the 70 weeks and the 2300 days are dated. What decree? The decree of Artaxerxes. What year? 457. Right? Must have been issued by the king some later time before the 10th month of the Jewish year, 457. From that time, according to Daniel, there would be 69 weeks. We just did 69 weeks, right? 69 weeks ends in when? When Jesus was anointed, right? 27 AD, right? Okay. 480 years to the appealing of Messiah. It had been thought by many that this period was to be filled in 26. But this is a mistake. It requires 457 and 26 entire years. What does this entire years mean? Entire years. The fullness of time. So what does that mean? It has to end, if it starts in the fall, it has to end in the fall. If it starts in the spring, it has to end in the spring. So this is like fall to fall, spring to spring. All right? It has to be entire years to make 483. But as we have seen, a part of 457 must be left out of the reckoning. The time must therefore be made up by the addition of a part of AD 27. So Jesus must have been anointed in AD 27, right? Okay, right? Right? Is that, what is this entire years? What was he being shown? What mistake that the Millerites made? What mistake that they actually had when they were saying Jesus was going to come in 1843? What mistake was being hidden to them? The fullness of year mistake, right? Fullness of year. So what was Christ doing here? Was Christ holding his hand over the chart? What was Christ doing here? He was lifting the hand. Now, you are now understanding the fullness of the year principle, right? It has to be from fall to fall, right? That Samuel Snow was the first one to realize it's going to be entire years, the fullness of year, okay? Right? He wrote this letter, right? It was published on April 3, right? He published on April 3, right? So this is an increase of knowledge, right? Because it was first brought up by William Miller, and then he had an increase of knowledge over here. The hand of the Lord was being lifted away from that chart. Okay, what did he do? He said, okay, you know what? I can actually read it. I'm just going to say, right? He actually basically made an argument that the 6,000 years is going to end in the fall. The 2520 ends in the fall, right? The 2300 days ends in the fall. 70 weeks ends in the fall. 1290 and 1335, that's a different thing, okay? But all these things, he says, has to happen when Jesus comes. Now, 1290, obviously, he knows, doesn't end. 1290, he actually says, happens in 1799. And then, but he says 1843 happens, 1335 falls on 1843. Okay? But he says, this all work together showing that it has to be in the autumn, right? The end of the 70 weeks, the end of the 69 weeks has to happen in the autumn, right? The 15th year of Tiberius, in when John began his ministry, commenced in AD 26 and corresponds to the part of 26 and a part of 27. In the latter part of AD 26 and the former part of AD 27, John began his ministry, right? The time is fulfilled. This must have been, I think, the autumn of 27. It is certain that it was after the Passover, as we learned by comparing John and Mark. If then the 69 weeks ended in the autumn of 27, then we may expect the 2300 days to end. It has to end in the autumn also. Deduct 483 from 2300 and the remainder is 1817. So many years remain to be fulfilled in autumn of AD 27. Then add to that date 187 years and it must bring us to the autumn of 1844. So he says Jesus is going to have to come in the autumn of 1844. Right? When did he write this? Look at this. This is very significant. When did he write this? Right. He wrote this in April 3. When was this disappointment?
April 19th.
On the 19th. All the Millerites were saying Jesus is going to come on April 19. When Samuel Snow says, you know, the 19th, 16 days before, about 2 weeks before the disappointment, Samuel Snow says, you know what, Jesus is not going to come. Jesus is not going to come in April 19. Jesus is going to come in the autumn of 1844. So what does that mean? He wasn't really disappointed when Jesus didn't come. Everybody else was disappointed. He wasn't disappointed. You know, that has a bearing for us too. There's going to be a disappointment. A lot of people are going to be disappointed. But those who are studying, they're not going to be disappointed because they know there's going to be a delay, right? There's going to be a delay. There's going to be a delay, right? Yeah. There's a lot of people going to be disappointed, right? That's the first thing. William Miller was disappointed. Look at this, April 3. 16 days before the first disappointment, Millerite and the whole Millerite movement, they're all disappointed. But not Samuel Snow. He wasn't he can't be that disappointed. He just said 2 weeks before, hey, it's going to be, right? He first wrote this in February 16, 1844. And it was eventually published in April 3. Right? Wow. Okay? All right. All right, so we put, oh, sorry about this. Okay, who's this? This is the Andrews University teacher. His name is Peter Gerard Damsteeg. Right? Peter Gerard Damsteeg. The Foundations of the SDA Message and Mission Part 1. Okay, essentially, Damsteeg here summarizes Samuel Snow. Right? Although these calculations indicate the season in which the second advent would take place, the exact date was determined by Snow through the topological argument, kind of like the chronological argument, which had been expounded by Miller. See, Miller had first gave the idea more than a year before, in 1843, right? Miller had shown that the Jewish feasts were a type that were to be fulfilled by Christ at both his first and second advent, right? Yeah. Right. According to Snow, the vernal type is the spring types, which had been fulfilled at the first advent were the Passover, right? The offerings of the first fruits, which is the antitype of the resurrection of Jesus, and the Feast of Weeks, right? That's the scene as the anniversary of the Lord's descent on Mount Sinai in giving the law, with its antitype in the descent of the Holy Spirit at the Pentecost, right? Passover, Feast of Unleavened Bread, and Pentecost. Those were the vernal feasts. That was right? Okay, this is what Damsteig, right? This is a teacher in Andrews. He's right.
Yeah,
This is actually right, right? He's right.
that's what he was saying.
Yeah.
Let's see what the was said.
Right, okay. However, the autumnal types which were observed in the 7th month of the Jewish year never had its fulfillment in the antitype. The only explanation for this, he found the assumption that they were to be fulfilled at the second advent. Okay, he said the autumn types is going to happen before his second coming. It was the type of the Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur, which led Snow to the calculation of the exact day of Christ's return, stating that on the Day of Atonement, the 10th day of the 7th month, the high priest went into the most holy place of the tabernacle, presenting the blood of the victim before the mercy seat, after which, on the same day, he came out and blessed the waiting congregation of Israel. Right?
That's what they do.
That's exactly right.
That's what the priests do.
So, that's right. Exactly. So that's how they figured out October 22, 1844, based on the 10th day of the 7th month, which is the Day of Atonement, an autumnal type of the Jewish feasts. Right? Okay. Okay, so let's put that on a line here. Right? April 19, they were disappointed. Miller, they thought that Jesus was going to come here. All the Millerites believed that Jesus was going to come here. But you know what? Samuel Snow, he made, right? He says it's going to be in the autumn of 1844. He says, you know what? Jesus is not going to come here. Jesus is going to come here. And he first wrote it on February 16, 1844, and he had it published, right? What is it when he publishes it? Formalizes the message, right? Right. There's a formalization of these messages, right? Okay, so here's Samuel Snow. He wrote it and he published it. You know what? As a matter of fact, it was published twice. February 22 and April 3. He published it twice, right? It was formalized. Okay? And then there was yeah, all right. Okay. All right, I think we'll do one more, okay? We'll do one more letter. Now this is May 1, 1844. You know, I had fun time looking for all these. Yeah? I actually went to the archives and looked up these there and made a picture so I can put it here. This is Wednesday, May 1, 1844. This is after the disappointment. Right. But these as natural beasts, made to be taken and destroyed, speak evil of the things that they understand not, and shall utterly perish in their own corruption. In these words, the Apostle Peter is describing the false teachers. Oh, he says, you know what? There's going to be false teachers. Samuel Snow is talking about the false teachers in the last days. It appears fully from the first verse. For a specimen of the fulfillment, take the following paragraph, which I extract from the Northeastern Puritan. So from one of the publications that at that time was talking about the false teachers. It was contained in an article headed Causes of Opposition to the Ministry, the leading editorial. So they had an opposition to the Millerite teachings, right? These false teachers. Okay. Now this is what he wrote. Dear brethren of the Advent faith, this document which I now present you bears the mark of being genuine. You know what? I just found this document. It looks like it's really genuine. If so, it proves conclusively that our Lord was crucified in the middle of the last week of the 70 weeks. Right? It is dated in the 17th year of the sole reign of Tiberius Caesar. Right? This document is called the death warrant of Jesus Christ. They said somebody found this. It is a document that they found that the death warrant of Jesus Christ was written by, I think it was Pontius Pilate. Okay, anyway. It is dated in the 17th year of the sole reign of Tiberius Caesar. Tiberius Caesar. I say of his sole reign because it was in the 15th year of Tiberius that John the Baptist began his ministry. But in the 15th year to the 17th, there are but about 2 years. Consequently, here would not be time for John's ministry. And then for half of the week, anointing to 3.5 years times to elapse. The difficulty is removed in this way. John's ministry began in the 15th year of the administration of Tiberius, and not his sole reign. His administration embraced 2 years and a part, which during he reigned jointly with his uncle Augustus. So he reigned together, right? But then he had a sole reign. This commenced in the AD 12. 14 years from that brings us to AD 26, when the 15th year began, in which commenced the ministry of John, which continued to the autumn of AD 27 at the termination of the 69 weeks. So he said, this crucifixion, based on a certain document that somebody dug up, proves that Jesus was actually, right? He was actually crucified in the middle of the week, which is 31 AD. 31 AD. Because at that time, William Miller was teaching that Jesus was actually crucified in 33 AD. Samuel Snow said, you know what, based on this document, it turns out this document was a hoax. So he came to a right conclusion based on an erroneous, a hoax. But you know what, God actually works in mysterious ways, I guess, you know. Yeah. It turns out that 27 AD was the beginning of the 69 weeks. 31 AD was the middle of the week, the midst of the week, right? Yeah. Although he used this document and turned out that this was actually a hoax, right? Because what? It actually placed Jesus' crucifixion on March 25. This document says Jesus was crucified on March 25. And you look up, March 25 was a Sunday. Now, Jesus was not crucified on a Sunday, obviously, right? And there's another version of this document. It said that Jesus was crucified on a Tuesday. So, you know, these documents are hoaxes. But it was partially correct that it placed it on the year 31 AD. Okay. All right. Let's see. But the soul, right? Yeah. Right. Okay. You know, I guess I'll just read this. The sole reign of Tiberius began not far from the commencements of AD 15. When there will be 17th year bring us. This question is not a difficult one to solve. 16 full years. All right. Okay. Oh, I think I just repeated here. 3.5 from this point brings us to the spring of AD 31, when our Lord was crucified in the middle of the week. Now he's starting to understand the 69 weeks, right? The 69 weeks and the 70th week. In the midst of the 70th week is Jesus was crucified in the midst of the middle of the week. 3.5 more, the last half of the week, during which the word of the covenant was confirmed by them who had heard the Lord. So it was to the disciples. First, the covenant was given by Jesus for 3.5 years. And then, the last 3.5 years, it was given by the who? By the disciples, right? Brings us down to autumn AD 34, when Paul, the last of the witnesses, was converted and qualified to testify the great fundamental truth of resurrection of Christ. Thus was the gospel established, or the covenant confirmed, AD 34. I believe this argument is to be based on correct premises, and to be perfectly sound. What then is the conclusion? It must be certainly this, that as the 70 weeks ended in the autumn of AD 34, the remaining part of the 2300 days being added brings us to the autumn of 1844. So then he gets, you know what? Jesus didn't come on April 19. You know, I was right. Before I was saying that it's going to be autumn. You know, it has to be autumn, right? and he wrote this on May 2nd, 1844. May 2nd. Okay, I'm going to, this is, what does Dambstig say? After some months following the first disappointment, see, some months, right? A time setting expounded by Snow aroused the attention of many Millerites. Already in February 1844, on the basis of the 69th week, terminating in the fall of 1827, he reckoned that the second advent would take place on the autumn of 1844. In May 1844, right? May 1844, Snow calculated the end of the 2300 days in the autumn of 1844 because of his view that the crucifixion occurred in the middle of the 70th week in the spring of AD 31. And the 70th week terminated in the autumn of AD 34. You know what? We got to put this on a line, all right? Okay, let's put the 70 weeks. Where do we find the 70 weeks? Where in the Bible is it? The 70 weeks. Daniel what? Daniel 9, right? Daniel 9, right? What about the 2300 days? Daniel 8. Okay, all right. Then I heard one saint speaking. Who's this? Daniel, right? Daniel had a vision. He said, then I heard one saint speaking to another saint, and said unto that certain saint which spake, how long shall be the vision? What kind of vision? How long is this vision going to be? What kind of vision? The Chow Zone vision. Concerning the what? The daily sacrifice and the transgression of desolation. How long is this vision? That's going to be concerning the daily sacrifice and the transgression of desolation. Who's the daily and the transgression of desolation? Who's that? Medo-Persia, Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, who else? Pagan Rome. That's the daily. What do? They persecute God's people daily. And the transgression of desolation. Who's the transgression of desolation? The papacy, right? And they trodden underfoot the sanctuary and the host. They trodden foot under the truth of the sanctuary and the people, right? And he said unto me, unto 2300 days, right? Unto 2300 Arab and Boger, unto 2300 mornings and evenings. Then shall the Kodesh, the sanctuary, be cleansed. 2300 days from 2300 days, then the sanctuary will be cleansed when? 1844, right? From what? 457. 2300 days, right? How long shall be the vision? When the daily and the transgression of desolation shall trodden underfoot God's people and the sanctuary. And then the answer was, unto 2300 days shall the sanctuary be cleansed. Okay. All right. Then he goes, Daniel 9:23. Then skip ahead, right? Skip ahead to Daniel 9:23. At the beginning of thy supplications, the commandment came, and I came to show thee, for thou art greatly beloved. Who's talking here? Gabriel talking to Daniel. Therefore, understand the matter. Understand the Chow Zone, right? The Dabar. And consider the Mare. What's the Mare? This is the Mare, the 2300 days, right? Because what did Daniel see? One saint speaking to another saint. Who did Daniel see? Gabriel talking to Jesus. So that's the Mare vision. He had a Mare vision. He saw Jesus talking to Gabriel. One saint talking to another saint. What did he say? 70 weeks. 70 weeks are what? are determined upon thy people. Where is it determined? In the front or the back here? It's in the front. 70 weeks are? What does determined mean? Cut off. 70 weeks are cut off. 70 weeks are cut off here. Right? Right. 70 weeks are cut off. Upon thy people and upon the holy city, to finish the transgression and make an end to sins and make reconciliation for iniquity, and to bring an everlasting and righteousness and seal up the vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy. To anoint the most holy, right? Know therefore and understand, from the going forth of the commandment to restore and build Jerusalem. Here's the going forth. Right? And the people of the prince shall come and shall destroy the city and the sanctuary, and the end thereof shall be with a flood, and unto the end of the war desolations are determined. And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. In the midst of the week shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease. Right? How many weeks? 7 plus 62. That's 69 weeks. Right? And how many is left? 1 week. Right? So this is from 457 to 27 AD. Jesus was anointed here. And in the middle of the week, he is cut off. Right? The end of the 70 weeks ends when? 34 AD. Right? The middle of the week, he is cut off. How is he cut off? He is crucified. And he's crucified in what part of the year? In the spring of 31 AD. We know that, right? He's cut off in the spring. So that means if this is in the spring and it's 3.5 years later, then Stephen must have been stoned in what part of the year then? 3.5. No, it's 3.5. It has to be in the fall. So if Stephen was stoned in the fall of 34 AD, and this is Arabs and Boger, this is mornings and evenings. It has to be a fullness of year. So if this is a fall, then this what has to be a what also? The beginning has to be what? A fall also. If this is the fall, this is the spring, this is the fall, then 457 has to be what? A fall also. If the beginning of the 2300 days is a fall, then the end of the 2300 Arab and Boger has to be a fall also. All right? Because of the fullness of year.
Is Jesus anointed on the spring or fall?
It's got to be fall.
Yeah, it has to be fall.
It has to be fall because 3.5 ends in the spring. Right? So Jesus was anointed in the fall of 27. Right?
At least the water's cold.
Yeah, that's true. Right. Yeah, it was. Right. Right. It was in the fall. Jesus was anointed in the fall. And Stephen was stoned in the fall. Because it's Arab and Boger. Now my question here. This is, we got this question last night. Right. Why is the 1335 that begins in 508 AD does not follow the fullness of year? 1335 ends in April 19. Right? 1844. 1335.
It was 1840. Oh, wait. Oh, okay. I think 1844, right?
April 19, 1844.
Is it like the one?
Okay, here we go. Here's the question here. I'm going to put you the question. Right? It ends in April 19, 1844. When does the 1290 end? 1798. When the papacy was taken down. When was the papacy taken down? It's on February 11. if it's a fullness of year, they both begin in 508. Why do they end on different dates? If it's fullness of year, right? So if prophecies are to be right, so if prophecies are to be fulfilled in the fullness of year, right? Why is the 1290 and the 1335, which has the same beginning, in 508?
In the fall or the spring and fall?
No, it doesn't matter because it begins in 508,
Okay.
right? It actually ends on different dates. Now, this is the question I was asked last night. And I go, you know what? I actually know the answer, but I have to give it. All right?
Well, the one's 1335 and the one's 1290.
Yeah, why? Why is it, then it can't be a fullness of year?
Then it's not going to be fulfilling the prophecy, then it's not the fullness of year.
The answer is right here. You go look up Daniel 8:14 and you look 2300 days. What is the days? 2300
Day and night.
Arabs and Boger. Evenings and nights. Okay, go to Daniel 12. Daniel 12 verses 11 and Daniel 12 verses 12. Is it 1335 Arabs and Bogers? You have to have your e-sword now. You have to have your e-sword. Daniel 12 verse 12 and Daniel 12 verse 11. Was it the 1290 and the 1335? Was it Arab and Bogers also? Daniel 8.
Daniel 11, no.
Look at Daniel 8:14. The King James Version says 2300 days, but what does the Jewish Bible say? The Hebrew is 2300 Arabs and Boger, evenings and
That's the Jewish one.
yeah, that's the original Bible says it's 2300 evenings and mornings. Right.
Daniel 8,
Daniel 12:12, blessed is he that waited and cometh to the 1305 and 30.
Days. What is it? The days, Arabs and Boger?
It doesn't tell you Boger, no, it doesn't tell you.
What does it say? It actually says Yom. It's not Arab and Boger.
What does it say on your, yeah, it's
Yeah,
not.
Arab
it's
and Boger is 8:14.
2300 days.
It's not the Boger and the
Okay, what is Daniel 12:12?
Daniel 12:12 says
35 and 30 days. So it's not.
H3117 is Yom.
Yom.
That's what it says.
It's not Arab and Boger. So the 2300 days is special.
No, it's because
1335.
for in H14 they have
No,
one
the 1335.
they have one definition for Arab and then one definition for Boger, and then in 12:12 they just have one.
Right. And 1335 also.
H3117.
Yeah.
So 1335 and 1290 is different than 2300 days. 2300 days is special
So even
because it uses a fullness of time. It's Arab and Boger.
But the
1335 and 1290, although it begins on 508,
they begin the
Why
same.
it is not a fullness of year time prophecy. 1290 ends in February of 1798.
Even in the translation of the James, it's not American Boger and
It's Yom,
Yom, yeah.
right?
Even in the translation. I
Right?
just noticed that now.
You know what? This is, you know, this is the increase. This is why 2300 days the hand was hidden. Even in the King James, you don't know it says days. The hand of the Lord was hidden. Do you think people would have noticed this? People didn't notice this. Because 2300 days is the fullness of year. Has to be from fall to fall.
Yeah,
But the 1290
you said you don't know if it's fall or spring, so you can't really do Arab and Boger because you don't know if it's fall or spring.
But the thing is that they both begin on 508 at the daily, when the daily was taken away.
1290 begins 508, 13.
Yeah.
But they both, but one ends 1798, one ends
But when you go to the papacy, when was the papacy taken away? The papacy was not taken away on April 19th. They don't end on the same date. If it was actually a fullness of year, they have to end on the same date.
They have to end on the same date.
Right.
It's the fullness of year.
Right.
Oh, then they're not the fullness.
It's not the fullness of year. Why? Because it's not Arab and Boger.
So fullness of year since they have to begin at the same date and also end at the same date.
It has to be in fall and fall. So the what was actually on the 10th day of the 7th month in 457. That's the beginning. And it ends on the 10th day of the 7th month in 1844. Right? That's Arab and Boger. That's the fullness of year.
1335 is
It's only talking about one-time prophecy. Bible is talking about two-time prophecy. So
That's why we know it does not end on the same date.
yeah.
Because it's not Arab and Boger. Do you get it now?
yes,
All right.
It's pretty
not the full.
It's actually hidden. Nobody knew this. Nobody knew this until it was opened up. You know, Samuel Snow was the first one that opened this up. Opened it up. The hand of the Lord was being lifted up. Right?
What did you say? The papacy didn't fall on April 19th?
No,
No, February.
it was February.
April 19th is the first day of the first month, right?
Right, that's the first day of the first month. That's the end of 1335.
Oh, so if it was Arab and Boger, then the papacy should have fell April. Oh, okay. That makes sense.
Because they both start in 508. 1290 and 1335 both start at 508. If both were fullness of the year, then both have to end on the same date on different years.
On the same date and the same month.
And the same month of different years.
Of different years.
If both were Arab and Bogers. The thing about it is, they're not Arab and
One was
Bogers.
February and then one was April. Okay, that makes sense. That's good.
Nobody knew this. The hand of the Lord was covering that mistake. The fullness of the year mistake. It was not a mistake. It's actually designed. A design what? For those who really want to study. And Samuel Snow studied, right? And what happened? Was he really disappointed? He wasn't disappointed. He already said. William Miller said, hey, you know what? Jesus is going to come April 19th. 2 weeks ahead before, he says, no, Jesus is going to come in autumn. In the autumn. Right? And then later said, yeah.
So what was his experience in autumn when Christ didn't come?
Yeah, he was right. Samuel Snow eventually apostatized.
Yeah. Yeah, that was the size.
Yeah.
Into what?
Yeah, he became a minister of another denomination.
So is the one that.
Yeah.
Look at Gideon.
Colin.
Ah, yeah, Gideon. Yeah.
What was Caleb? Was he part of this? He wasn't part of
No. This is 1844. This is 1844. But Jesus used, even if he had a flawed method of actually figuring out, it was partially true. But he was led to the truth anyway, right? Yeah. But it's amazing. We still need to understand this because we know that we're going to make predictions. A lot of people are going to be disappointed. There's going to be, the 10 virgins are going to be disappointed. But the one with the oil have provision because they are going to anticipate a delay. Samuel Snow, he anticipated a delay, right?
So what were you saying about it's based on, you said it was based like it was a hoax or something? Like,
Yeah.
it was partial?
Yeah.
Exactly.
There was a certain document that they claim, okay, here's a document that was published. This document was actually published in the time of Tiberius. That Tiberius, this document says that Jesus was actually crucified in 31 AD.
The first one was that there was a decree that they said that they have to arrest Jesus.
Yeah, something like that. Right.
The
Yeah.
second one was about Jesus' crucifixion, but both of them were false.
But they were false because it turns out that they say it was March, and it turned out that they said, okay, Jesus was crucified on a Sunday.
But he based off
On that.
the time
Well, he added that as a second, like a second or maybe third witness. But basically, how he found this was obviously from the prophecies, understanding of the 69 weeks and the 70 weeks and the midst of the week and 457, fall to fall, fullness of year. But the main understanding was the fullness of year. All right? Okay, all right. Wow, that's a lot of... We got to understand Millerite history, right? And that is a more sure word of prophecy.